I'm off to the campaign trail. It's the best city in America. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody. Certainly welcome to the 4th annual Cure Corridor event here in Scottsdale. And for all of you who are participating here today and who may have been participating for the last few years, I want to just say thank you for your participation and your support for, I think, what has been a great effort to bring this industry and this community together for a common cause. Let me first just introduce some of the elected officials that are here with us today in attendance. And I believe we have Representative Heather Carter here, Vice Mayor Kathy Littlefield, Councilman David Smith, and Councilwoman Linda Milhaven. If you're here, please, if you could stand up and be recognized. And of course, we couldn't do this without the support of many in the community. And special thanks to our presenting partners, some of which Greg has just mentioned as well, but it stands to repeat. And that is the Scottsdale Business Development Forum has been with us for a number of years, and newly this year, the Scottsdale Area Chamber of Commerce. We certainly want to thank them for presenting for us today. Our title sponsor, Cigna. I'd like to certainly get a round of applause for Cigna. They have been a big supporter through the years. And then collectively, our partners in the Cure, and that's HonorHealth, APS, and Barry Riddell. So please thank them as well. As you know, every year we come together to share valuable insights into the recent accomplishments of companies that call Scottsdale Cure Corridor their home. We have a terrific program for you today, and you'll hear about some excellent local efforts as well as a dynamic keynote speaker. Just for the record, I suppose I should probably mention that I recently was invited by China to attend a China-USA International Sister Cities Conference in Nanchang that focused on healthy cities and healthy citizens. I was honored to receive an Outstanding Individual Award for my work in that arena here in Scottsdale with our sister city, Haikou Hainan PRC. It was also based upon Scottsdale's reputation for a healthy environment, lending itself to a healthy quality of life, plus the exchanges with medical doctors that we've hosted here with the great help of our partners here in the Cure Corridor, and of course, discussions within the industry and the international community. China itself cites their efforts to learn, address, innovate healthcare for a growing number of their citizens, as having had contributed to an increased average lifespan. They indicate that it's somewhere in the area of some 8 additional years of life to the average over the last 10 to 15 years. And it's a fact that they're very proud of. And I think it's more or less incumbent, or I should say it's included within what our efforts are here today on the overall, so the cure. Consistent with our Cure Corridor thinking, Mayo Clinic is opening their School of Medicine in Scottsdale. It's in a partnership business degree program with ASU. And Mayo plans to enroll 50 physicians in training beginning this coming summer, and to add 50 each year until they reach their capacity of 200. Having just taken a tour of that facility, it's a beautiful and wonderful facility up there at 136th Street and Shea campus that the Mayo Clinic is at presently, which incidentally will be staying there as well. The science of medicine is changing at an amazing rate. I think everyone in this room understands and appreciates that fact. So the field of medicine must evolve on all fronts. The Mayo medical students will be provided with the most advanced learning environment available, which combines technology-mediated instruction with traditional instructor face-to-face, all with state-of-the-art technology. Just what you would expect for a Scottsdale-based Mayo Medical School. There's so much more happening in the Cure Corridor and much more to report, but I'll give some of my time to the experts, the innovators, who will be ready to speak to you in just a little bit here. I truly believe that every year we come together to celebrate the accomplishments of the bio-life science community. We see the national and global impact Scottsdale companies make on the lives of patients and their families. I say this, as you probably already know, because this corridor is very near to my heart and a cornerstone of an initiative I started just a few years ago, in hopes to break down walls and to allow our community to come together and further share knowledge and ideas that may impact the world around us in the area of healthcare and the health sciences. So now we come together for the fourth consecutive year to celebrate the leadership on the corridor, which continues to amaze me with its vibrancy and its depth. With that said, I'd like to introduce Dr. Chris Yu, Chairman, Founder, and CEO of Systems Imagination. As you may recall from last year when Chris was a speaker, Systems Imagination is an innovative bioinformatics consulting group. When I first met Chris, when he was opening his office here, he explained to me that the reputation of Scottsdale's Cure Corridor is one of the prime reasons that he relocated his business here in Scottsdale. So please give a warm welcome to Chris Yu.
Thank you, Mary Lane, for that introduction. It's really fantastic for us. It's an honor for Systems Imagination, a 3-year-old startup, to be welcomed back to the 4th annual Cure Corridor event. And last year we were a rapid fire presenter, and it's just amazing to see what Mayor Lane and his office and the efforts of the Scottsdale City community come together and grow from 200, I believe, last year to 260 this year to continued growth. It's a great thing to see. So we're very honored to be here. We have 4 great speakers for you here today. And before we get started with them, I want to describe the ground rules to you. So if the 4 speakers could come up and join me here, I'll introduce each one of you. Rapid fire works like this. Each of our presenters will have 7 minutes to tell us about their great work. The efforts are representative of each one of you here and the great work going on in the Cure Corridor in Scottsdale in general. What I will be doing is monitoring each of you for 7 minutes each. We're going to have a buzzer here. And then after the presentations are concluded, we will have a short question and answer section. And if there's any time left over, we will ask the audience if they want to ask any questions of the presenters. Also, if you wouldn't mind, if some of you are, big Twitter fans, I know we have a president-elect who is. If you want to tweet out what's going on here, and the handle for this event is hashtag Cure Corridor, all one word. And you can help us all kind of get more awareness to be spread about the Cure Corridor event. So let me introduce, without further ado, our 4 presenters. We have Andrew Burns, Chief Executive Officer of Gobiquity, here right to my left. Joel Bartholomew, President and Chief Executive Officer of GlobalMed. Dr. George Runger, ASU's Department of Biomedical Informatics Chair. And Dr. Mark Slater, Vice President of Research at HonorHealth and Chief Executive of HonorHealth Research Institute. So here are 4 presenters today. So I think what we'll do is we'll just get right into it and ask Andrew to give us our presentation.
Great. Here's the All right. Well, thanks very much, Chris. Hello, everyone. It's exciting to be a part of today's discussion. The Cure Corridor is exciting as there's a common commitment amongst all the companies here that we're improving the quality of life. It's that simple. At Gobiquity, we are really addressing an issue that probably most people take for granted. Today, over 400 million people around the world, or in 2020 that is, will have vision impairment. And the interesting fact, this is a global phenomenon, and the interesting fact is that 80% of the vision issues around the world are either preventable or can be treated. Yet the greatest challenge that's out there is access to care and identifying the right patient at the right time. And there's a disproportionate number of eye care professionals that can actually help to treat the right patients. What's also, though, exciting that can help us overcome this gap is really where there's adoption of technology, in particular around smartphones and digital technology, that's going to allow for the potential of treating these conditions or identifying it early. Not to mention, there's also a more empowered consumer where parents want to be more empowered, the consumer wants to look after their care, they want a better quality of life. And that convergence is what Gobiquity is built around. What we have done is we're building a platform that allows for early detection and prevention of vision impairment utilizing broadly available technology. Your iPhone is the perfect example. And what we're focusing on is developing a whole suite that's going to encompass and allow for all health constituents, not only the physicians, but also the patients, to actually manage their vision and try to avoid the onset of vision impairment. And we're initially focusing on the pediatric market, and this is where we have come to market with our product called Go Check Kids. But at the same time, we see a continued growth of our business in terms of the global reach, as well as the entry into the young adults and helping with their development. But not to mention, we're also looking at the adult side, where today, as many people know, diabetes is an epidemic in the marketplace. If there's ways that diabetics can actually avoid the blindness that is very common in terms of the diabetic retinopathy, age is also an issue where age-related macular degeneration is one condition where older generation are losing their central field of vision. The whole premise of what we are built around is trying to identify those vision disorders early so they can be treated. So a little bit about Gobiquity itself. We were actually a company founded in Oregon, at Oregon Health Sciences University. Our founder is David Wong, one of the preeminent ophthalmologists in the world. And we're a venture-backed company. Our background is venture-backed by a firm, primarily InterWest Partners, which is based in the Bay Area, well known for its ophthalmology experience, companies like Glaukos, as well as on the digital health side with companies like Hippocrates and Doximity and WellTalk. We also have an investment from Mark Benioff, who is the founder of Salesforce.com, recognizing the value of the cloud. Everything we do is connected through the cloud. The company itself, though, didn't really launch our first product till 2015, and that's really where we launched Go Check Kids, and I'll talk about that. But we came to the market right after that launch. We came here to the Cure Corridor recognizing a significant opportunity to actually leverage the healthcare base that's here. And we've also completed a fundraising round, and we're actually continuing to invest in our intellectual property. The product that we've come to market with is really an all-in-one vision suite that we're offering health professionals to allow them to use the smartphone camera and flash to analyze a child's eyes in real time to identify potential risks for vision disorders. The numbers are simple, the numbers are significant. 1 out of every 4 children have a vision issue. If you can identify the vision disorders at an early age, they can be treated either to eradicate an eye condition like lazy eye or to actually help them with the child's development. And we've been able to launch this product and offer it to health professionals where they can integrate it into their workflow and actually are able to actually see that their children are being screened. And having launched this product in January of 2015, we've seen phenomenal adoption. We've screened 175,000 children already, and this number is growing at a substantial rate. Just in the third quarter of this year, I should say, there were 41,000 children screened. That's a 180% increase year over year. And this is something that for us is gratifying. We see in real time the children being caught and identified with vision disorders. More than 7% of children are being identified as vision disorders and being referred to a specialist by their primary care physician. We have already 2,500 physicians using our software and a pipeline of over 7,000 physicians, not only in the United States, but actually globally that are wanting to utilize our software. And more importantly, we actually want to add and really increase the adoption of our offering and give it to the parent. And that's where we're launching a consumer version of our product this coming year, where we'll allow for the parent to be empowered to be able to screen their child determine whether or not they have a vision disorder, and at that point be able to see their healthcare professional. What's significant here is that we can overcome the challenge where only 20% of children are screened before the age of 5, and instead allow them to actually be screening 100% of children so that they can be properly treated if they do have a vision disorder, and also have the ability to develop and have the luxury of having the proper education and being able to learn the proper way. So as I had mentioned, the company itself, we're venture-backed. Our backers are Interwest and Mark Benioff. We've been fortunate that we just did close another Series B, our Series B, that for $7 million. That's really going to be used for the continued growth of our business, both on adding to our health professional network, extending our offering to the consumer, but also advancing our offering to go globally, and we are expanding the portfolio of products so that we can treat the younger adults as well as those older adults with the age-related vision disorders. So I'd like to thank everyone today, and once again, I thank everyone for the commitment that the Cure Corridor is having, and the city of Scottsdale to allow Gobiquity to come here and keeping such an open door to allow us to be speaking with so many great companies and so many great constituents in the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Great presentation. All right, our next presenter is Mr. Joel Bartholomew, President and CEO of GlobalMed.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mayor Lane. Thank you to everyone here that has come today to support Scottsdale and its growth. And we're so excited to be in Scottsdale, and we have been here since our beginning in 2002. So GlobalMed is a company in Scottsdale at the Scottsdale Corridor, right across the street, formerly called the Air Park, for where we're located. We have been focused on the same issue, but in a broader range than what Andrew has just shared with us. We've been focused on the capacity issue and also the access to care issue. And we've been doing that since about 2004, where we realized that people needed to be seen instantly by docs when they are in remote locations. And so we've created a suite. We worked with a lot of different providers of video conferencing systems, and we literally designed systems that allowed for that capacity issue and that access issue to be addressed instantly. And I'll share a little bit of how we've done that. One of the main issues is the capacity. Today in the United States, we have about 390 people per physician. But in other parts of the world, that is as high as 50,000 individuals to one physician. The other day, I heard a story in Malawi, which is one of those countries that has such a terrible, disparate relationship between docs and patients, 1 to 50,000. If you get sick in Malawi, you either wait for the physician or the nurse to come to your village once every 4 weeks. If you're too sick and you cannot wait, how you seek care is not via an ambulance, not via a car, but someone you love straps you on their back and carries you to the next village where the caregiver may be. Now that is a challenge. And so here in the U.S., what we have done is we have created technologies that go in the clinics, they go in workplaces, they're used by our government, by the VA and the DOD. And these systems literally have all of the diagnostic equipment attached to them, and that equipment, then the data is shared in one seamless workflow. So an EEG, an EKG, the vital signs, the video, the imaging, all comes together in one simple platform where the specialist located somewhere else can see that patient and render care at that urgent care, at that emergency room, at that clinic. Now, in doing so, we've literally have put somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 systems in around the world. And we are seeing on average in the last year, I think about 3.5 million patients. We don't provide the doctors, we provide the technology and the empowerment to the physicians, to the healthcare providers. Some of our customer base, as I shared, we're in the VA, and we're in every location of the VA. 150 some hospitals, 850 community-based outpatient centers, where vets do not have to travel to go see their doctor. They can go to their local clinic, a 1,500 square foot clinic that they can actually go to and be seen live, and their data aggregated into where the physician is. And even our Undersecretary, Dr. David Shulkin, the head of the VHA, sees patients when he's not administrating the VHA, and he actually sees patients 2 times a week from his office, and I think he sees them in very disparate locations across the U.S. The White House is probably one of my most favorite from the aspect of the access that I've been granted and my team's been granted to provide the systems that are on Air Force One, to provide the systems that are at the White House, at Camp David. Next week, again, I'll be up at Camp David and helping to educate the medical staff there for when the president or his staff are in Camp David, they literally will have care that is connected to some of the best physicians around the world. Here in town, Maricopa Integrated Health, Banner Health, HonorHealth, and others, Mayo, uses our technologies to where they are able to see patients in other locations around the state. Around the world in Petrobras Oil Company. So if you imagine you're on an oil rig, you're 400 kilometers offshore, kind of hard to get care, very expensive to transport. Our systems are there tied to physicians, rendering care instantly, and then proper decisions can be made whether or not to evacuate. Another one is in California. The entire correctional system uses global med technology so that the patients or inmates do not have to be transported off-site when not needed. In fact, in California, they've got a new way of doing it where they actually don't even bring the inmate out of their cell down to the infirmary because of all the challenges that happen when they do that. They actually roll a system right to the cell. And this has increased such safety for others that it has been extremely successful, and other states are looking at replicating what they're doing in California. This is a map of our locations. We're actually in 60 countries, 6 continents. We have about 70 different distributors that are educated on how to deliver the technology and integrate the data into one seamless platform. We have 2 offices, one here in Scottsdale, and our second office is in Côte d'Ivoire on the Ivory Coast of Africa, and I'll share a little bit of why that is in a moment. Traditionally, hardware, the devices need to come together to the software, and so we have created a software suite in Scottsdale that talks to all these different manufacturers and then places it in a very seamless workflow, very easy workflow. And that software right now, I think, is in the hands of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 to 20,000 different physicians, and in somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000, 5,000 locations. We've also taken the heavy systems that we have, and we've reduced them to the iPhone. And so that you can a soldier, a veteran can be in their home, they can get care. A doctor can use their iPhone, can use their smart device to get the data, can see the patient live at any point in time. So we've been rounding out our software platform, but one of the big challenges that we've seen is we always see patients, our systems see patients when it's in a dire need, when they truly are needed for acute or episodic care. So we have changed a little bit of our focus, really going after well-being. Well-being, you'll hear more and more about it in the future. Presenteeism in your workforce, in your workplace. You may notice that certain folks in your operation, you may possibly yourself, you're not operating at 100%. And often that is from depression or from hypertension, pre-diabetes. And so we're developing a whole side of apps that will help in the wellness side as well to get everyone to handle their care personally. We've rounded out our solutions. I'm running out of time. I'm Red here, and I'm going to go on to my colleague, Dr. Lynn.
Thanks, Joel. We'll have more time to go through your solutions and exciting work you're doing in our Q&A. The next speaker is Dr. George Runger, Chair of the Department of Biomedical Informatics at ASU.
Well, I'd like to also add my appreciation to for the opportunity to speak here today to the City of Scottsdale and the Cure Corridor organizers. The organization within ASU, the Department of Biomedical Informatics and Biomedical Diagnostics, is part of the Cure Corridor. Most people are familiar with ASU being at the SkySong facility, but for a number of years, our department's been located up at Shea Boulevard on the Mayo Clinic campus. We appreciate the opportunity to work with Mayo Clinic folks up there, and we look to extend further work throughout the Cure Corridor. We have trouble trying to explain, particularly to students, what our mission is, and so we've created some infographics over the years to try and help. This is one of them that we use that sort of explains that, activity in biomedical informatics sort of spans a broad spectrum. Everything from wearable devices that we've heard mentioned earlier into healthcare delivery platforms that work on the cloud architectures that people are considering these days, to big data, to precision medicine, where a lot of the folks work with biodesign researchers, ASU Biodesign Institute, in biomarker discovery, as well as colleagues locally here in other organizations. So there is a spectrum of work that goes on in the department, and it's sort of we try and convey that to the students. The department's fairly new. We've been around since about 2007. PhD degrees, on-ground master's degrees. More recently, we've created the first bachelor's degree in biomedical informatics in the country. We've got some super students in there, and it's some of the professional organizations are looking at our experience to see how that's going to advance the field as those students advance in their careers. More recently, we started a master's degrees, both of them online, in biomedical diagnostics, another one in health informatics online. The field integrates with a number of different disciplines, so it really is an interdisciplinary field in that sense, both with clinical medicine to the computer infrastructure. We have a number of collaborators. Some of the long-term major collaborators are in the circle there. Some of the healthcare providers, some of the research organizations, as well as others. Over on the left, I added a few of the Scottsdale collaborators. I probably left out a number of them. That was the list that came to mind. The Business United for Scottsdale Schools is a group we've recently started associated with. The Scottsdale Community Colleges, Systems Dynamics is on the list, and more recently we've had collaborations with HonorHealth as well. We even collaborate with the University of Arizona. Although after the past football game, I'm not so sure if that's going to continue or not. So there's been a long list, and we hope to grow that. Strengthen some of the collaborations and sort of advance the biomedical field as we go forward. The other way we try and explain what we do to folks is in terms of a spectrum that looks like this, where molecular diagnostics or molecular, we might say, bioinformatics is on the left, dealing with molecular data, all the omics information that's so important these days for personalized medicine through imaging for organs, through clinical informatics, which is care of the patient, both delivery of the knowledge as well as trying to discover new knowledge from clinical data. And then finally, at the far end, the important trend in population health management and the associated issues that deal with those events. I'm also representing the School of Biomedical Diagnostics, which is one of the newer schools at ASU. The goal of this school is really to engage in industry. It's really an industry-focused school first, with the objective of promoting diagnostics as an important career path for students, as well as making it a sort of unique but integrated research discipline within the medical sciences. The degree has attracted a large number of students to the online program, and we continue to expand and improve. It's not a laboratory-based degree. It tries to consider the biomedical industry from a broader view, where we look at the business of diagnostics, application, and so forth. Students take some basic courses in immunodiagnostics, molecular diagnostics, and imaging, but also they take courses on things like healthcare policy and payment. They take courses on the regulatory environment. They take current trends. They all have to do an applied project. And so a few more local companies there are listed where we've had students in applied projects. The list is increasing every year as we add students and add projects. And so we're looking forward to continued growth in this program, and we think it can be a good catalyst for the AZ Bio Consortium locally here. Finally, a few research projects, maybe some of the novel ones that go on in the department, just to kind of provide a representative description of what we do. Everything from natural language processing of treats to try and detect adverse drug reactions among nutritional supplements as one unique project, down there to 3D models of aneurysms for 3D printing, and then finally placed within the body cavities for pre-surgical evaluation of some of the work. And in between there, we'll do work on big data in terms of relationships to air quality and asthma, and other items on the list. And then finally, I'll mention the Center for Health Information and Research, which is another component of our department that's been around for a number of years, dealing with individualized health information and performing some of the activities that follow on the right-hand side there. And with that, I'll stop and thank you.
Our final speaker will be Dr. Mark Slater. And once again, I hope you're all tweeting, doing as our elected officials do, and telling others out there about the wonderful talks that are happening right now.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Mayor Lane, and your terrific team at the city. The city of Scottsdale has been just really a wonderful and critical partner for HonorHealth, and a key to our success over the more than 50 years together now in developing and growing together as HonorHealth has grown and as the city of Scottsdale has grown. And we're really grateful to have this as our home and our ability to serve this community. Today I'm going to focus on the work that we've done together over the past decade or so in our HonorHealth Research Institute and some of the advances that have come. The one thing I can promise you is that this is going to be very rapid in trying to cover that terrain in this amount of time. Just first as a reminder, of HonorHealth is the merger of Scottsdale Healthcare and John C. Lincoln came together in 2015 to serve our community of about 1.6 million people across Scottsdale and the greater Phoenix area. We bring together more than 11,000 employees and 3,000 physicians, so a major employer in this area. And our campuses involve 3 major campuses in Scottsdale along the east, as well as 3 across Phoenix, and more than 74 ambulatory campuses spread across the greater Phoenix area. We began our story more than 50 years ago in the South Scottsdale and the Old Town area with the Osborne Medical Center up in the upper left corner. You see that building in the 60s just coming into focus. On the right is what the hospital looks like today. You see there the home of our hybrid OR and our joint Department of Defense military partnership involving training, clinical care, and research there, particularly in trauma and other areas. About 20 years later, in the 80s, developing on the Shea campus, about 11 miles north. You see the campus taking shape there, and today, a home of many elective surgeries, our women's and family services and such. It's also the home of Virginia G. Piper Cancer Center, our first multidisciplinary cancer center on one roof in the area. That brings together our campus of our cancer center as well as our HonorHealth Research Institute. At the bottom left, you see our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Dan Von Hoff, a true local and national treasure, probably developed more new cancer therapies than anybody in the world, and knows as much about pancreas cancer and the care of anybody. And then in the early 2000s, again about 11 miles to the north at Thompson Peak, the new Thompson Peak Medical Center, you see there the robotic surgery and a complete care now developed in our North Scottsdale area. But I'm going to focus on a work that started in 2005 and was initiated by a lead gift of the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust. It all began with that philanthropy and the strategic development which brought together Scottsdale Healthcare at that time with Dr. Von Hoff as our Chief Scientific Officer, a strategic partnership with TGen as a scientific partner, and to develop a focus on the potential of what was developing in personalized medicine and in cancer and beyond. One of the unique aspects of our research institute is that we are very focused on a singular purpose, and that is we exist for nothing else than to bring tomorrow's cures to our community today and to accelerate that pathway of those new interventions that can benefit patients right here, right now in our community. If we go back and think about what the world was like at that time, this is a New England Journal article that took a look at the results of cancer therapies and their development up through 2002. Drug development at that time was really a trial and error, throw things on the wall and see what sticks kind of an approach, and only 4% of patients in phase 1 clinical trials for cancer had any kind of clinical benefit. We knew that we had to do different, we knew we could do better, and we knew that by bringing the best science and combining that with the best care, we could make a difference and improve that dramatically. So our approach is right in line with what Mayor Lane talked about and the Cure Corridor concept. Knock down the walls, create an institute without walls that brings in collaboration. The best talent, the best technologies from across our area, as well as across the country and across the world into Scottsdale to make a difference for our community. You see some of our collaborators on this board here, which include hospitals, universities, research institutions, and companies to get that technology and talent together. The concept then is leveraging that talent to make a real difference. And here's an example of a basic science team with Dr. Von Hoff, his team at TGen, doing the basic science and the work on developing biomarkers and understanding of disease mechanisms, seamlessly handing off to TD2, our Scottsdale partners, doing the preclinical work, and then to our clinical teams that are doing the clinical research at being able to develop these drugs, test them in humans, and move it forward. That initial work was supported by Jerry Bisgrove and the Stardust Foundation right here in Scottsdale with the Bisgrove study that pulled together a 9-site national study to test this concept of personalized medicine and show we could go from theory to practice, identifying targets for treatment in cancer, that there were novel drug combinations to make an effect, and that you would improve clinical outcomes. That work spurred the great development where now targeted therapies are commonplace around the country. That gave us confidence to move into clinical trials, and this was one of our first that involved the very first person in the world to try this new therapy was a local Scottsdale man in his 70s that had metastatic basal cell cancer. His cancer had gone to his lungs, to his liver, to his bones. He was on oxygen. He was in terrible pain, sent to hospice with about a 6-week life expectancy. But through the research that had been done demonstrating new molecular pathways and understanding, in this case it was the hedgehog pathway that was implicated in these basal cell cancers, we could apply an oral agent, a pill, rather than a traditional chemotherapy. And you see on the right-hand side there his scans at 8 months with the cancer dramatically reducing in his lungs. This is Jerry at a neurological exam, Dr. Von Hoff, in the middle of treatment here, off of the oxygen, back home to normal living with exercising, dancing, and a terrific clinical outcome. What else should be noticed is that the drug company that was developing this drug was ready to throw the drug away because it had failed that trial and error kind of a general cancer trial. And it was through this targeted therapy that we were able to identify which patients would benefit from this. And the drug then subsequently was approved by the FDA through a fast-track mechanism that took what typically takes more than 15 years and $1 billion to develop a new cancer drug, did that in less than 5 years. There's the package insert from the drug Vismodegib. There's Jerry's wife and a couple of the research nurses showing that this approach to combining molecular medicine with drug development in an accelerated process can speed interventions. This is now common practice out there, not only for basal cell cancers, but available for certain brain tumors in children and other cancers as well. But this is what we really hope for, and this is the result. This is an 87-year-old with the cancers into his ear and skull. Complete response, cancer-free. He decides to celebrate by skydiving. This is what it's all about, bringing new life to our patients. Those results then encourage others. So Stand Up to Cancer, the Hollywood effort that says that the government is moving too slow on cancer, wanted to put together the 5 dream teams that had the best chance of collaborative work to be able to make breakthrough advances in cancer. We were identified as the group for pancreas cancer with our partners at TGen, Johns Hopkins, University of Pennsylvania, and Columbia, and the Salk Institute. So a high-powered group coming together. HonorHealth was the only community site and non-academic that was a part of the Dream Team's effort. We're very proud to say that now we've received 3 of these Dream Team awards and been part of that, the only group that's had repeat awards and continues to lead the efforts in pancreas cancer. So what difference does that make to our community? Well, this is an example of a man who's benefited from that, and bringing that talent and that technology from these key partners around the country together here has led to breakthroughs for pancreas cancer. 3 new approaches that are through the FDA that have doubled the 1 and 2 year survival. This is a gentleman who came to us with stage 4 pancreas cancer. He's now back to work for the city of Phoenix. He's had a complete response and at this point has no detectable cancer. And he's giving a talk there to Celgene, one of our local partners who developed one of the drugs in his combination therapy. So the work that's being done there has given us new hope for even such difficult diseases as pancreas cancer, where we have some patients with stage 4 pancreas cancer living with us more than a decade and giving us hope for the future in eradicating that difficult disease. The work is not just in cancer. Some major advances in cardiovascular and other diseases here. We've done the seminal work in development of new stents, both drug-eluting stents and bioabsorbable stents, so stents that actually dissolve and leave the heart vessel repaired. First humans in the world to get those were right here. The work that was done here a decade before, these have gone through FDA for approval. Also work on minimally invasive heart valve replacement, making a huge difference in cardiovascular care for our community. That leads to not only better care for our community, but Scottsdale being a true destination site for medical innovation. Patients from 49 states, who has a friend in Rhode Island? Please send them our way. 49 states and 24 countries have come here to Scottsdale. My favorite story there is a gentleman from Palo Alto who bypassed a pretty fair medical school to come here. He had a rare cancer, first in human study, 92 times over a 6-year period. He came here to Scottsdale for his care and for services in our community, went away cancer-free. So it's really been remarkable, not only bringing patients to a destination site here in Scottsdale, but also our businesses. That allows our HonorHealth to become a resource to the community. This is a program we put on for the Scottsdale Unified School District, bringing their teachers in for an intensive program learning biosciences and helping to develop those biosciences leaders for the future and for job opportunities coming forward, because we're also a significant employer and we see they're great jobs of great pay. So thank you, Mayor Lane. Thank you, the Cure Corridor, City of Scottsdale, and to our community leaders. Together we have increased the longevity and quality of life of patients. We've created knowledge that's not just academic, but that has actually changed practice and put new therapies out to be realized. We're helping to develop our biosciences economy and community throughout the Phoenix area by key development of TGen, TD2, Molecular Profiling Institute, IGC, imaging endpoints, and our universities. And that initial $4.5 million gift has led to more than $100 million back in just direct expenditures from our research institute into our community. So it has an economic impact as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. And looks like you all got water for a prize, right? So if those 4 presentations aren't proof that what we're doing here in Scottsdale is meaningful, has direct impact for patients, and is leading the way, I think we can clearly state that you're seeing companies that bring healthcare right to the patient. You're seeing companies that spread globally from here in Scottsdale. You're seeing top-notch research and the next workforce being trained in academic disciplines that the next knowledge worker will need to be successful in the U.S. economy. And then you're seeing actual patient benefit every day via this translational medicine that's occurring here in Scottsdale. So what we're going to do is step into the questions and answers section, and we have some prepared questions for each of you. We'll start at the end of the table. Even though you just gave the presentation, I guess you're still amped, so we'll do that. So Mark, one of the things that's fascinating about HonorHealth and what you're accomplishing there is people talk about bench to bedside all the time, taking discoveries that occur in research and making it turn into life-saving therapies for patients. What is it about Scottsdale, about Arizona, about being the premier healthcare institution here, providing translational medicine in the way that you do, that makes you feel that Cure Corridor and everything that we're all doing here with you is the place to be? What are the things that you also want to see over the next 5 to 10 years occur here that will help HonorHealth and what you're doing spread out to the rest of the world?
Chris, thank you. That's a terrific question. And Scottsdale has really been an attractor to people like me and people like Dr. Von Hoff, who have worked in some of the largest and most successful universities and institutions around the country, and have appreciated the opportunities there, but have also been frustrated by the bureaucracies, by the difficulties in translating and moving ideas into action. I used to joke that my job as a medical school professor was to write papers for my 11 closest friends around the country. And I wondered whether that work was really having the impact that I wanted. And so what attracted me from the beaches of San Diego to the deserts of Scottsdale was what I saw as a collaborative community. I saw a hungry community that was building and vibrant on the new technology and the level of talent that you're seeing on this stage today, and what the stories that we've heard about. And we've seen a group that really wants to make a difference in the quality of life for our patients in our own community, and would not settle for being second best or accepting status quo. Those forces, I think, brought together to make this difference and be able to focus on driving results that have a real difference here. We've set out then a mandate for ourselves of trying to reduce and eliminate bureaucracy and obstacles to motion And between that and the collaborative spirit and the ability to derive those collaborations, we've now become the kind of a destination where companies and others seek us out to get things done that they frankly can't get done elsewhere. For us to be successful in the next few years, I think we need to continue to build on that level of collaboration. We need to continue to invest in our future of developing talent so that we have that critical mass. And that's where you get that exponential growth in opportunities that feed back into better quality of life for all of our community.
Thank you, Mark. Dr. Runger, you're next. We are very fortunate to have had some interns this past semester from your department. I have to say they're all fantastic, stellar students. They display the kind of qualities that I was in San Francisco for 10 years before here, and they can absolutely go toe-to-toe with the students that I've seen coming out of universities there. Dr. Runger, do you think that the way to Scottsdale building upon our growth and our leadership here in translational medicine, do you think that the students that you're training have the core skills and are ones which we can somehow convince to stay and to help us grow our community and our businesses here before they go off to the other destinations that they often end up at?
Okay, thank you, Chris. The information technology in healthcare is such a big driver for the improvements, just like it's had enormous impacts in other fields and disciplines and so forth. And so I think that a trained workforce is critical, to make the kind of advancements that we're looking to make. To move the center of mass of healthcare and kind of bend the cost curve, those information technology components are just big inputs into that system. We have to deliver knowledge efficiently. We need the semantic interoperability of our data, right? So we can't just fax things around in a sense. We have to have more understandable type relationships between all of our data structures. And so those efficiencies need sort of that workforce skill set that we're trying to build. I know it's important because it's very difficult for us to place all the requests we have for internships and jobs. There are so many opportunities for the students that our biggest challenge is getting the word out into the high schools, into the undergraduate students about how good this job market is and how important this field is for advancing healthcare. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come here to kind of let folks know that the programs exist and the career paths are excellent. And so I think that workforce is going to contribute towards the development areas within Scottsdale, entrepreneurial as well as the existing organizations in both research and delivery of healthcare. I regret to say our last 2 PhDs last year were both hired by Google. Fortunately, they'll still be doing work in healthcare, but not within Scottsdale. So I think the next step is to not only make them as competitive as they are nationally, but then keep them locally engaged.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Runger. So Joel, here and in Africa, you have 2 physical locations. Your business is one of the, kind of unsung heroes, I would say, of Arizona. You've been at this for 14 years. Long before the Cure Corridor concept was born from Mayor Lane's office, but your success and your spread of your solution globally, I think, speaks to the opportunity to grow businesses here in Scottsdale and grow things from Arizona that everyone can benefit from. So what do you think we need to do as a community, as the Cure Corridor, to deliver that cure, to deliver things to the patient in a more efficient and technologically based level? And Africa, tell me more about that.
Thank you, Chris. We've got a wonderful environment in Scottsdale. With being in 50, 60 countries around the world, most of those partners that we have in those countries, or even their medical professional staff, come to Scottsdale. And I will tell you, several have bought homes here because it's like no other place on the planet. And they love going up north to Sedona and to Flagstaff. But the workforce that we have, the talent that we have in Scottsdale for our company with software engineers, hardware engineers, industrial designers, cloud architects, mobile app designers is actually very good. We're very pleased with with the caliber of individuals here in Arizona, and especially up where we are. And it's really nice too in Scottsdale because we pull from around the valley for our workforce to come in, and they like it. I mean, especially where we're located next to the Court of the restaurants, all that plays a part of the quality of life that we have here in Scottsdale. So I think the mayor and his team and the chamber has done a great job, and so there's not a whole lot I would change there. For us around the world, though, we have pretty good care here in Scottsdale, as from HonorHealth and others. In other parts of the world, it's our mission. We could focus more on just our local environment, but we really believe the access issue is global. And so the applications that we're designing are designed really to help more people. We have the vision has been for years, quality, timely care for all, no matter where they are. And for us as a company to be serving our U.S. veterans, which has been such an honor. I'm a U.S. vet, and so to serve them, and think about this, the same technology that is in Elkhorn, Utah, providing the best doctor to that patient is the same technology that the White House uses, with very little modification. There's a little bit more jamming equipment where they are, and so we have to continuously develop to fit our market. And the products that we've developed for the U.S. and a lot of the industrialized world they don't work in Africa. And so we've had to redesign and bring the touch points of care everywhere.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Okay, Andrew, you've been the quietest so far. We're going to ask you perhaps the hardest question, which is, you had your choice of forming your company and establishing headquarters anywhere. Once you had your Series B, congratulations, by the way, you could have been in the Bay Area, you could have been anywhere. Why Scottsdale? And thinking of all this stuff going on, and as an entrepreneur, and you're going to make your business grow and succeed, what do you want to see from the Cure Corridor that will help you succeed, help Gobiquity succeed, and really drive your business forward?
Yeah. I thought this was a 20-minute Q&A, so it's exciting to be here. But I have to say, in January of 2015, I sat with our investors and the board of directors, and they said Scottsdale, and it was quiet. And that's really probably an answer that a lot of companies will have when they initially say it. And it's not because of anything negative here. It's an unknown, and I think that's where I take it to January of 2016. That same group of investors, they said that was the right choice. And that was exciting that they came and said that, but it was more of the traditional venture capital model where those organizations are looking really for the norm, the same blueprint, and what's successful before will work again. So we did change it. We did identify Scottsdale. There were a lot of reasons, a lot of good reasons why we came here. First of all, I think as you can see here, you have such a mix. There is actually and this is kudos to the city of Scottsdale, there's actually this ecosystem that is encouraging collaboration, and it's actually trying to learn from others, and not just in terms of the experience that you're having, but how to go out and hire, what markets to find, what office location should I go to. And those are little things that you can take for granted, that when you're in an early stage company, you're actually not wanting to be burdened with that level of commitment where you're distracted by that. Now, at the same time, what I was excited about coming here is this is a very favorable business environment when you think about the operating costs. It's also a business environment that actually has a strong healthcare expertise. It may be more legacy in terms of the larger companies that are here, but that's actually very attractive, and that's a knowledge base that wasn't existing in the Bay Area, the Boston area. That was more biotech in Boston area, more digital tech in the Bay Area. So that was attractive. Now, at the same time, there's still some areas where I know Scottsdale has to improve. And it's not where we say the city of Scottsdale has to improve, it's us as the constituents, where we have to encourage academia to improve upon the development community. We are having a significant challenge around software development, and it doesn't happen overnight, and we have to be accepting of that. But you really do need to create that culture. That's why the Research Triangle, that's why the Bay Area are so successful, is they have strong academic commitment in the students that come out. At the same time, it's also, we want to continue to make this an attractive area. I'm really excited about what Scottsdale is doing from a social perspective. It's more of a city. It's more of a feel where there's an all arts, greater arts and culture. And that emphasis is important because that audience, that target population that we're trying to hire wants that. They want to go hiking. They want to go out at night where they can actually have a chance to learn and socialize. And that's something that I think Scottsdale is doing a much better job at, but it has to be continued to grow because that's important where they're not here just to work. People aren't here to work. We don't want them to go to San Francisco. We want them to stay here. So it has to be really a full city commitment.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Mark, George, Joel, Andrew, thank you so much for your presentations. Thank you for the Q&A. I think I'm out of time, unfortunately, but please thank the speakers with me. And I hope everybody's been tweeting and doing all the social media stuff. We'll be checking, right, Danielle? So if you've submitted any questions that weren't answered or asked, we'll have our speakers available after the session here, and you can talk to them about any of their work. Very exciting work. So with that, it's now my pleasure to welcome Scottsdale Area Chamber of Commerce President Mark Hegel, who will be introducing today's keynote speaker.
Wow, what an impressive group. I'm not sure that I'm even worthy to be standing on this stage, and knowing what's coming next is something that it's even the best yet to come. Thank you again for attending the 4th Annual Cure Corridor event. As you know, the Cure Corridor is home to over 13% of the Phoenix metro area's bio-life science employment. For a number of years, the Scottsdale Cure Corridor has been growing in notoriety as a destination for entrepreneurs, startups, and international research professionals. Companies on Scottsdale's Cure Corridor employ more than 20,000 with a direct economic output of $2.5 billion and an indirect output of $3.5 billion annually. Anchored by companies such as TD2, HonorHealth Research Institute, and Mayo Clinic, this medical corridor is one of the strongest employment centers in the state, and we are proud. Scottsdale is a unique point in the development of the Cure Corridor. We continually find companies that want to grow and develop their business in Scottsdale. Staying abreast of today's business and rapidly changing healthcare market is complex, and the merging of technology with bio-life sciences is becoming more commonplace with each passing year. This year's keynote speaker is a managing partner and president of Palo Alto Investors, LLC. His investment management firm, which was founded in 1989 and manages over $1.8 billion in assets invested in healthcare. Board certified in radiology, he has served on the clinical faculty at Stanford from 2000 to 2006. He received his BA from Harvard, MD from Duke Medical School, and clinical training at Stanford. June has served on several corporate and nonprofit boards and has published dozens of patents, scientific articles, and business essays. At this time, I am honored and would like to welcome Dr. June Yoon to the stage to discuss the future of healthcare, the real evolution in life sciences, aging, and the business of healthcare is ahead of us.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Mark, and thank you to Mayor Lane and to everybody that helped produce today's event, as well as all of your participation. I'd love to learn something about all of you. How many people here in the room has 3 or more children? How many of you have 2 children? How many of you have 1 or no children? Okay. Here's another question. How many of you believe that children can see things that we can no longer see? A lot of you. Well, I guess we have an honest group here. I have a couple of boys, and it really is striking how they can see things that I can no longer see. I would like to ask all of you to look at the screen and do something very simple. Count the number of times the letter F appears in this single sentence. It's not a trick question. I know you guys are fast readers, so when you're done, please look back at me. Okay. How many people saw all 3 Fs? Okay, most of you. How many people saw 4? Some of you. How many people saw 5? Okay, even fewer of you. So the real answer is 6. And now that you know the answer, please see if you can see all 6 Fs. 5 flies of, scientific, of. Isn't that amazing? So young children have no problem counting these Fs. And yet, those of us that have grown up tend to have some trouble. Essentially what happens is, as we hit puberty, our mind switches from a camera to a projector. And this is a part of the evolutionary program we all inherited, which was probably useful in the era we evolved. But in the modern world, when we're living into our 80s, 90s, it's not the most efficient model to live, because we are open to the world for about a dozen years, and we get into this execution mode. Now, that actually is kind of depressing, right? I mean, the fact that we spend most of our lives projecting upon the world after spending just a few years listening. But I would argue that this is actually great news. You know why? This means that some of the most exciting opportunities are probably hiding right in front of us. They are probably the Fs. The Fs represents the future of the world, future of the country, future of healthcare, your own future. And in fact, the opportunities around those might be right in front of us, and all we got to do is call them out. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to call out some opportunities about the future that are accessible today because they're hiding in plain sight. Are you all ready? Okay. So one of the obvious things that's hiding in plain sight is that we're in the healthcare century. 20th century was a great century. It was a period of remarkable advancements in medical technologies and delivery of care. The industry has done a wonderful job of helping extend both the quantity and quality of life. So we should say thank you. The current healthcare system is absolutely amazing. At the same time, a lot of opportunities remain hiding in plain sight. Let's just talk about a few of these. So we've known about germ theory for about 100 years. And yet, when you visit hospitals of today, typically, there's a lot that hasn't been translated into practice. You walk into a cafeteria. First of all, they serve bacon, eggs, and potatoes after having been taught that bacon, eggs, and potato may not be good for your health. But more importantly, you'll watch a patient from a third world country that might be carrying an infectious disease hand over coins to a cashier, and then the cashier hands it over to the next patient who is immunocompromised wearing a mask. We've known about germ theory for 100 years, and yet we have doorknobs in hospitals. We have elevator buttons. We're essentially projecting standard construction models on a system that really needs something radically different. You know, during the winter season, we are often taught by our pediatricians to keep our kids away from areas where there are a lot of sick children who might be touching a lot of things, right? And then if you look at a pediatrician's waiting room, they have toys and books, right? I find this slide funny because disease knows no time of day. Things like heart attacks and strokes can happen any time of day, any day a week. And yet we project 9 to 5 working schedules on our providers such that mortality rates from stroke and heart attacks are higher after hours, on weekends, and on holidays. And when you think about how much money we spend trying to reduce mortality through innovation, there are some very simple ways to reduce mortality that are hiding in plain sight. In fact, I've spoken to the authors of these innumerable studies that have demonstrated these high mortality rates, and I've asked them, have you changed practices in your institution? And they typically say, not yet. So to the point that Mark mentioned earlier, the best is yet to come. As great as the industry has been, these are the early days of the healthcare century, the early days of the healthcare economy. I've been investing in biotechnology for 18 years. And when you think about the fact that Genentech went public in 1980, that's 36 years ago, I've been investing in biotechnology for half its history. That's insane, because I'm not that old, right? It just shows you how young this industry is. In fact, I started medical school 26 years ago. And when you think about the fact that you could argue modern medicine was started in 1953 when Watson and Crick discovered double helix. That was 63 years ago. I've been in medicine for over 40% of the history of modern medicine. I mean, it just shows you how young this industry is. So we should say thank you to the industry about the remarkable progress that it has made for all of us. And yet, as exciting as some of these opportunities are hiding in plain sight, they're not good enough. They're essentially different ways to rearrange waiting room furniture on a titanic system that is fatally flawed. Because what we're doing today, what is the arcade game that the modern healthcare system most resembles? Anybody have any idea? Whack-a-mole. Thank you. Thank you very much. So the current system is a responsive system, and we put out fires, and we do a pretty good job of it. But the older we get, the more we need it. And eventually, we are creating older and older people that need more and more health care. And when you create a system that creates more demand, that's a feed-forward cycle of rising demand, which is the main reason why we're seeing exponential rise of healthcare costs. And that's profitable for the industry. But the trajectory is pretty risky, right? Because if you keep creating more demand by virtue of what you're doing, you're going to eventually kill the economy. And the second fatal flaw of the current system is that everybody dies, right? So no one survives aging. And as good as the current system is, it's probably the second best idea we ever came up with. We need something radically better. In evolutionary theory, there's a concept called adaptive landscapes. You can imagine this graph just representing innovation, and value is downward. So the more you can come down towards gravity, the more optimum your solution. And in evolution, you can get stuck in these local valleys where you think you've optimized around innovation because it looks like it's uphill both sides, and you do incremental work around that little valley, but you can't actually see the fact that there might be a much lower, better valley elsewhere because you can't get enough energy to go up that hill. This happens all the time in evolution-based innovation, and it happens in industries too. It's quite possible as an industry that modern medicine is in a local minimum, and we cannot see the global minimum yet. And we've got to create enough activation energy to potentially see a better healthcare system than what we have today. And that is what Finding Cures is all about. I want to congratulate all of you who are involved in Cure Corridor for really focusing on the possibility that there might be a much better way to address the needs, the health needs of the human population, aiming towards cures instead of palliative treatments that create more demand in the future. In fact, the word curiosity and cures has the same Latin roots. It basically means tending to. Curiosity is tending to the truth, and cures is tending towards the need to make it whole again. So what does it mean, truly, to cure something? Let's do a deep dive on thinking about the definition of cure. When I think about evolution, evolution endowed in us the first healthcare system. We have tremendous capacity to self-heal. When we are young, whether it's a broken bone or a cut or catching a cold, we have tremendous intrinsic capacity to get back to homeostasis. Everybody here learned about homeostasis in biology class? Some of you. Okay, homeostasis is a state of equilibrium. That's what homeostasis is. Now, what we weren't taught is the notion that homeostasis is achieved by our intrinsic homeostatic capacity. Nature endowed in us incredible homeostatic capacity that essentially is our intrinsic healthcare system that allows us to get back to homeostasis, get back into balance. And that's essentially what health is a state of homeostasis. Some synonyms for homeostatic capacity include words like resilience, robustness, dynamic range, anti-fragility, coping skills, buffering, auto-regulation. There's lots of ways to think about what homeostatic capacity is. The best way to conceptualize this is as a 1970s toy called Weeble Wobble, where you push it and the body self-centers, just like the toy does. That's what nature endowed in us. In fact, it's so successful that when we are young, we don't even realize we have homeostatic capacity. In fact, the true definition of health is the feeling of nothing. When we were 12 years old, we felt nothing. And then in the middle of our lives, we start to feel something. And you talk to our parents or older folks, and they feel everything, right? So think about health as high homeostatic capacity. It's with us for about 40 years, and like many things in life, we don't realize we have it until we start losing it, typically around my age. And then we start to experience funny things. So now that I'm in the middle of my life, all of a sudden, I can't ride roller coasters anymore. I can't do somersaults. I can't do cartwheels. Because when I go on those things now, when I try to perform those things, my Weeble doesn't self-center, so I come out wobbly, and I get dizzy, and I just say, I don't like them anymore. And my children have no idea what I'm talking about. Same thing with altitude. When I go up to the mountains, I feel dizzy now. I feel something. My children are running around. They have no idea what I'm talking about. In restaurants, all of a sudden, my pupils don't open up enough, and everything looks dark. When I go outside, my pupils don't close enough. Everything's too bright. My children happen to love one of the pastimes of Scottsdale. They're golfers, and when they are golfing, they're in T-shirts, and I tell them, guys, it's cold. I'm in 2 layers, and they say, Dad, it's not cold. And neither one of us are lying. What's happening is I've lost homeostatic capacity. I can't get back to equilibrium on my own. I need some help. I need clothes. I need HVAC systems. When I catch a cold, I don't recover in 2 days. I'm typically coughing for a month. I can't get back to homeostasis. I remember being able to stay up all night when I was in college and feel fine the next day. I recently went to a Lady Gaga concert on a Tuesday, and I was still tired on Saturday. Same thing when it comes to recovering from jet lag, from a hangover. It just takes forever now. Same thing when it comes to recovering from injury or wound. I played sports my whole life into my 40s. I broke my first bone at 43, and when I went to the orthopedic surgeon, I asked him, how long will it take? And he said, about 2 years. And what's happening is I'm losing my own rejuvenative capacity. I used to be able to eat anything and feel fine. And now when I eat a, quote, bad meal for dinner, it wakes me up at 1 a.m. So is it really bad diet that's causing disease or causing aging or killing us? Or is it lost metabolic capacity? Is it really inflammation that's causing aging? Or is it lost inflammatory capacity? In fact, when you look at athletes, why did they suddenly retire at 40? Jeter just retired a couple years ago at 40. He was a high performer, but like all athletes, when they hit their 40s, all of a sudden, they can't do it anymore. They're highly tuned to their body, but their homeostatic capacity erodes just enough that they go from being a Hall of Fame caliber player to an average player to retirement in a couple of years. These are all objective things that we know, we see, and we feel. Now think about all the subjective things that we can't feel. Objective things that we can't feel. Subjective things we just talked about. Objective things we can't feel, such as our blood pressure or our glucose. When we are young and when those numbers go high, our homeostatic capacity returns them to normal. After midlife, in some of us, they stay high, and we give it names like diabetes and hypertension. Are these really different diseases? Or are they all really the same thing? Lost homeostatic capacity, that's the Occam's razor for all the different features of aging. Now, this perspective gives us an opportunity to really rethink what health really is. What if health is having high homeostatic capacity, and aging is the erosion of intrinsic homeostatic capacity that makes it more difficult to achieve homeostasis on our own? So the short history of healthcare is it was inside of us for about 40 years. It departs us at midlife, and we create this $3 trillion system around us called healthcare to put us back into the middle, and then it's whack-a-mole, and then we die. So that's the short history of healthcare. We now have an opportunity to envision a different way to address this problem. What if we think about curing as restoring homeostatic capacity, as capacity building? What if curing is restoring our intrinsic homeostatic capacity? When you think about high blood pressure, when our blood pressure goes high, what we do for you today is we give you a blood pressure lowering medicine, which solves the number has returned to homeostasis. But because we've restored homeostatic capacity, we've restored homeostasis without restoring homeostatic capacity, what happens? It actually causes system atrophy. Your body is actually weakened as a result of the blood pressure lowering drug, such that when you come off of the blood pressure lowering drug, your baseline blood pressure is higher. This happens with every single pharmaceutical on the market where the chronic disease worsens over time the more we are on therapy. So if you fast forward into a nursing home, patients are on 25 meds, maxed out on all of them. It's a nice model to solve the problem short term, but are we really solving the long-term problem? Essentially, the model is we're using the acute care model of getting us back to homeostasis in a chronic disease, and that's why it doesn't really help us over the long haul. acute therapy should be reserved for acute conditions. And we need a different model for addressing chronic conditions, chronic therapies for chronic solutions. So what's the best way to lower blood pressure? Let's say your homeostatic capacity is now no longer what it used to be. You're now reporting high blood pressure. What's the best way to return it to normal? It's to exercise, right? To exercise, which is to restore homeostatic capacity instead of restoring homeostasis. What exercise does is the following. When we exercise, we're raising our heart rate, we're raising our blood pressure, and our homeostatic capacity is what returns blood pressure to homeostasis. So it's the secondary effect of what we're doing, not the primary effect. By the way, exercise has been shown to benefit every single disease of aging, and we still haven't figured out the mechanistic reason why. I think it's hiding in plain sight, because exercise increases homeostatic capacity. In fact, the analogy to this is drinking coffee. How many people here drink a dose of caffeine? Okay, most of us. It's a great pick-me-up when we take it, but the secondary effect is that we're more tired over the long haul, right? The more we drink, the more we need, because when we miss our morning cup of coffee, as I almost did this morning, you're more tired than ever because our body habituates. That's the one thing our body knows how to do is compensate. So what if we did the reverse? What if we actually gave people blood pressure raising medicines as a way to treat their high blood pressure? Put exercise in a bottle. That's insane, right? Well, because of the Hippocratic Oath, we all swore as medical doctors we would never do that, right? First, do no harm, which means that it is really, in many ways, an untested idea. Putting exercise in a bottle, raise your blood pressure as a way to lower your blood pressure. Well, fortunately, I think there's actually evidence that this works. That's essentially what vaccines are, right? Vaccines make your body worse, and your body is stronger. Vaccination is a way to increase homeostatic capacity. And I would argue vaccination is one of the greatest inventions in medical history. So I think there is reason to think that this might be something we should be trying. Restoring homeostatic capacity as a gateway to finding cures. I've been seeing fascinating data come out of things like hyperbaric chambers. If in fact we're losing barometric capacity, I can't get on mountains anymore or go scuba diving, what if we actually condition the body to increase our capacity? Does that actually improve our health in other ways? In fact, when you think about our homeostatic capacity during our early years, it is so high that the mortality rates for the population under 40 are about 0.1%. That's your chance of dying per year under 40. Which means if you could live at that rate of homeostatic capacity, how long you would live? How long would you live? I mean, it'd be like 1,000 years, right? Except that at 40, your mortality rate starts going up. Now, under 40, the leading causes of death are infection, car accidents, gunshot wounds, suicide. They're all externalities. We die of external things. And those issues persist into our post-40 life. But after 40, we start manifesting intrinsic reasons for failure. Diabetes, cancer, heart disease, strokes. And that's why right now, lifespan is a limit. But if you can now maintain homeostatic capacity, which means sustainable health, then lifespan should become a statistic again, right? If you can maintain the rate of mortality of 0.1% for a long time, life will be radically different. It doesn't mean that death will not exist, because there will still be infection and trauma. This is from Monty Python. What used to kill us in the pre-modern age was infection and trauma, which are the slings and arrows of life, as Shakespeare told us. And we've succeeded in surviving most of those things. Remember, mortality rates were so high that the average lifespan was in the 20s and 30s for most of human history, except we solved for those through technology and healthcare, such that most of us are living past our reproductive senescent age. Just think about it in the wild. I mean, death rates are so high. Infant mortality death rates are high. probability of surviving to puberty was under 50%. Again, average lifespan was in their 20s. We were likely to lose half our siblings, probably lose a parent. In fact, every meal was probably a predator-prey encounter, so chance of surviving per meal was, on average, 50% in nature. And yet now our survivorship is so high, we created a new way to die, which is aging. And what can we do about this? Well, in order to really reimagine cures, the first thing we need to do is to reimagine assessment of health, reinvent diagnostics. What we're doing in the healthcare system today, imagine an annual checkup, walking into an annual checkup. Typically, your physician will measure your heart rate, blood pressure, glucose, cholesterol. These are all state variables. What I mean by that is they all describe system state. But this is tantamount to a seismic scientist trying to assess collapse risk of buildings in San Francisco based on whether the building is still standing every year. That's state. In fact, what do? Seismic scientists, they actually push it. They do resilience testing. They do dynamic testing. They do response testing. That tells you much more about collapse risk than whether you're still standing once a year, right? But that's not what we're doing in healthcare. We are measuring state variables when in fact we should be measuring system dynamics. Here's what I mean by system dynamics. System dynamics is the state over time. Now, Minkowski taught us that we should be adding the fourth dimension to classical physics, that life has 4 dimensions, right? 3 dimensions plus time. That revolutionized physics 100 years ago. We have yet to apply that to biology. Right now, we're still in a 3-dimensional way to look at biology, the human body, and health. And by not having the 4th dimension, we are essentially missing temporal resolution of biodata. It's great that we're gathering all these biomarkers, but they're all state variables. But unless we measure those biomarkers over time, we're missing very important information. Let me give you examples. Our blood pressure changes more changes more sitting to standing than it does year to year. So the fact that we measure it once a year without reporting your position is bio noise. Your heart rate is largely stable your whole life, but your heart rate response to exercise is what declines with aging. So heart rate response to exercise, the responsive diagnostic, the dynamic diagnostic, diagnostics that include the 4th dimension are much more relevant in assessing your chronologic age, your biologic age, your chance of mortality, and yet we don't use it, which is crazy. I mean, not dying is a great way to promote longevity, and yet we haven't used this data about mortality to improve our state of being and increase our capacity for being. It's all hiding in plain sight. These are the F's. There's robust data that this type of dynamic diagnostics is a much better way to assess health and targets for improving health. Dynamic blood pressure, dynamic heart rate. You could throw HRV in there, that's heart rate variability. We've had 5 decades worth of data that HRV is a predictor of mortality in utero. When you're pregnant, if you're pregnant, they'll put a little scalp electrode, and the decision for stat C-section is when your HRV goes down. That's been known for 5 decades. It's standard practice. And yet the minute we come out of the womb, we take it off and we never measure it again. So that's all upside. We haven't done anything yet in this regard. So think about applying things we already know, dynamic diagnostics, to standard practice, and not just in these extreme situations such as cardiac stress tests. Let's add temporal resolution to biology, not just spatial resolution, and reinvent the entirety of the biomarker landscape. It is my understanding that Scottsdale is a leader in diagnostics. Well, we have an opportunity to reinvent the entirety of diagnostics. We own the intellectual property on the dynamic version of every diagnostic test out there that wasn't already dynamic. And we have committed to supplying this intellectual property to the community to really launch a completely different kind of diagnostic industry as a way to also build a completely different therapeutic industry. This is all upside. Same with lifestyle medicine. There's lots of behavioral and lifestyle recommendations that are being made out there that improve health, and I think they're all very well intended. We would like to add a temporal dimension to lifestyle treatments. When we think about system dynamics, what we want to do is maximize dynamic range. It's your ability to contend to variance out in the environment. When we spend a day outside, maybe surfing or on a boat, what happens at night? We sleep well, right? We get tired. The biology behind that is when you get exposed to the sun, it suppresses melatonin, and then you get a melatonin flare in the darkness. That's dynamic range of day-night variation. Every species in the planet's history lived in ambient light during the day and darkness at night, or maybe did the reverse if they're nocturnal. They had this natural dynamic range. How are we living? We're indoors most of the day. If we happen to step outside at all, we got sunglasses on, put a hat on. Our dermatologists ask us to put on sunblock. So not enough sunlight exposure during the day. And at nighttime, instead of enjoying the darkness, we throw all the lights on. So we're losing dynamic range of light variation, which affects our melatonin biology, which affects our hypothalamic biology, which affects our immune system, our stress axis, our endocrine system. How do we know that not living in ambient light isn't affecting our health? Same thing with temperature variation. Again, we're the first species in history to not live in ambient temperature. We actually have inherited incredible systems to contend with coolness and warmth. We have sweating systems. We used to have brown fat that allowed us to heat ourselves up. But now that we're trying to stay 70 degrees all the time, through HVAC systems, through clothes, we're putting clothes on our kids when it's 55, we're putting jackets on them. We're actually deconditioning the body and narrowing our dynamic range. We're debuffering, which is why we're weaker. So I would argue when you move to California, your blood isn't thinning, you're just losing homeostatic capacity. In fact, I gave a talk about a decade ago about this concept, and somebody in the audience said, my wife can tell the difference between 69 and 71. That's a disaster. You're supposed to have a much wider dynamic range. You're not supposed to feel anything. And yet we become so brittle, our dynamic range is so narrow, and our homeostatic capacity is so weakened that we can feel these subtle differences. We ought to spend more time in the mountains and scuba diving. That's the way to stretch dynamic range, right? Instead of narrowing our experience, instead of running away from what's hard, we should be running towards things that challenge your body. What doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Stretching, we're all designed to stretch, and the more we stretch, the more it keeps our muscles around. What happens if you stop letting our muscles experience dynamic range of stretching and flexing? Like put your limb in a cast. You lose muscle, right? So not letting our muscles experience their dynamic range essentially causes system atrophy. In hospitals, if you do nothing but this to patients, they've shown that people actually get out of the hospital faster. And yet, instead of letting our muscles experience their dynamic range, what do we do all day long? Not this one. We stay in our ergonomic and neutral sitting positions and driving all day long. Same thing with stress. Is it really stress that's killing us, or is it chronic stress, right? What we should be doing is alternating the stress with meditation and relaxation. So I'm glad that people are meditating and resting, but it's really the variance, it's really the alternation of stress is what we should be chasing, increasing our dynamic range. So not just sleep and rest and rumination, alternate your stresses. Alternate sleeping and meditating with riding roller coasters. And it's chronic stress that's deadly. I want to just say one thing about chronic stress. Have you all heard of secondhand smoke? Okay. You should know about secondhand stress. Secondhand stress means, imagine being a wildebeest in the wild, and the wildebeest next to you is freaking out, and you don't freak out. you're the one that's going to get eaten. And that's why we're all wired to make the stress of others our own. That made sense in the wild when, again, our mortality rates are pretty high per meal. Now that mortality rates are near zero per day, the fact that we are constantly making the stress of others our own is dysfunctional. That's a Darwinian maladaptation, right? So stay away from chronically stressed people, but more importantly, don't bring your stress upon others, right? I mean, this is the reason why heart disease runs in families in addition to genes. I have no doubt genes play a role in predisposition to heart disease, but there's also paragenetic transmission of heart disease in families. Type A parents create type A kids, right? So think about the fact that if you're projecting your stress onto others, you're causing them heart disease, right? So be very mindful of secondhand stress, both of those around you and those that you might project. In fact, I think modern life is all about chronic stress. We are afraid of everything. We've wrapped ourselves in our fears to a degree of total irrationality. Obviously, not my child. Okay. Other things that increase dynamic range as measured by HRV and other factors. Laughter. Laughter is a great one. Laughter increases our HRV, our cardiodynamic capacity. One of the most important things I learned after medical school is that laughter is the best medicine. I wish they told us that in the beginning. In fact, they made medical school completely unfunny. The best thing about laughter is that it actually reduces stress. And when you think about the fact that many diseases are communicable, not only infectious disease, but as we just discussed, all stress-based diseases are contagious. And yet none of our therapies are contagious. Like if I gave you a drug for gout, it's not going to make you feel any better, right? So we're up against an enemy that's highly contagious, and yet our interventions are non-contagious. Well, what's the one therapy that's contagious? Laughter, right? Again, I find that medical school should be training folks to be funny. I mean, we definitely have the best material, right? We have sex, death, and poop, which is the best raw material. We also have drugs. And yet we completely missed the opportunity to make medical school really exciting, entertaining, and funny. Here's another thing that increases homeostatic capacity. I just couldn't find any pictures on the internet on this one. So what this means is, just constantly vary what you do. Walk home a different way. Think about this metaphorically. Increase your dynamic range in your whole life experience. Travel more. Go do interesting things. Have different kinds of meals. Listen to interesting talks. Try things that you've never done before. Go to Burning Man. There's so many things that we start getting in our groove and doing the same repeated patterns. So increasing your dynamic range is not just for your health, but it's also for your mental health and your social health and your spiritual health. Constantly mix it up, stretch your dynamic range. And this is a completely different way to think about health. I love this quote from Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So the real goal of healthcare should be to make ourselves obsolete. We should try to put homeostatic capacity and health back in the body where it started so that we can go back to being civilians. I mean, if we succeed in putting homeostatic capacity back in the body, healthcare would be a lot smaller. People will be healthier. I mean, healthcare should be about a $300 billion industry instead of $3 trillion. We still need acute care, infectious care, obstetrics, trauma, orthopedics. But the vast majority of consumption comes from chronic diseases. Let's try to put that back in the body where it all started. Let's put health back in the body. And we get a lot more value out of those $300 billion as well. I'm going to leave you with a final thought, which is if we leapfrog all this, the idea of putting homeostatic capacity back in the body as the target for intervention, Healthcare 4.0, this gets back to my college roots. I studied biology and evolutionary biology, and one of the most provocative ideas I heard in evolutionary theory is the idea that aging might have been a trait that nature selected. The idea of retiring old members so we can make new members in life. Because obviously having children is a way of making better versions of ourselves as a generation, and then get out of the way. So essentially age out the population so they die, and then you make room for the new ones. That's an old idea in biology posited by August Weismann. That was around for decades until he was killed by Peter Medawar, a Nobel laureate, who in 1953 said that aging, senescence, can't be reflected in evolutionary selection because it occurs after reproductive age. So since you've already passed on your genes, there can't be selection pressure for aging being a code, like genetically coded. I would argue that Medawar missed some things. Grandmothering is an example of something that we do after we pass on our genes, and yet it promotes fitness. Same thing with males. Males reproduce long after, male reproduce long into their senescence. This is Hugh Hefner trying very hard. And women's reproductive senescence also happens during reproductive age. There should have been runaway selection to defer menopause, and there hasn't been. So I would argue that Medawar's argument doesn't hold. That in fact there was selection pressure to make aging part of our DNA. And ironically, the year we discovered the code for life is the year we gave up on looking for the code for death, which is what aging really is. And so that's all upside. Nothing has happened yet in that regard either, because we've had a framing that aging can't be genetically codified, so we never looked. So that's the thing that I'm most interested in, the fact that aging is encoded. And we already have examples of this. This is just to show that there's no reason why sustainable health isn't thermodynamically possible. We should be able to acquire energy to maintain homeostatic capacity. There's examples out in nature where there's no senescence. There's examples where aging happens rapidly after reproductive age. I want to call your attention to the concept of apoptosis, which is the idea that cells are all programmed to age and die. It was a heretical idea until it won the Nobel Prize, classical biology. So the idea that cells are programmed to die is a remarkable one. All cells are programmed to die. A few of them, though, edit out their own genome, and they now edit out their senescence. What do we call them? We call them cancer. So that's what's kind of remarkable. It is actually possible to edit out our own senescence and aging pathways. Nature's already showing us the way. Now, we got to solve cancer, right? It's the scourge of humanity. And yet some of us should be looking at cancer as, what are they doing right? Are they actually the gateway to showing us how to edit out aging and senescence? Maybe use some of our gene editing technologies that are available today. There's a possibility that the end of aging could be much sooner than we think, right? Now, I'm not banking on it, but we haven't looked. And that's worth looking. And it's looking like it's the end of my presentation, too. Now, can you fast forward for me going forward? I think this, okay. I'm going to just fast forward. This is we started an initiative that was initially called Weissman's wager, modeled after Pascal's wager. People know Pascal, right, the mathematician who was also a philosopher. It was discovered in his notes posthumously that he actually made a wager about whether or not God existed or didn't exist, and how he would behave. He decided, I'm going to just assume God exists, because if I assume he doesn't exist and he exists, that's eternal damnation. Whereas if he doesn't exist, that's, I paid a small price. And if I believe he exists and he does exist, I got eternal happiness. So he drew it up like, it's like a typical McKinsey chart. It's a 4-quadrant chart. And he elected to believe in God, and I hope he's happy with his decision. But the Weissman's wager is the idea that, you can't prove or disprove that aging is a code, but we just decide to assume it's a code and look for it, right? Because the payoff is so large. If it ends up being a code, you edit it out and we're done. We're done with the future of healthcare. And that's priced at zero. It hasn't been pursued because of Medawar's argument. But thankfully, in the intervening 60 years since Watson and Crick discovered DNA, we have all these molecular advancements and tools. So we now have a chance to test out Weissman's hypothesis. We essentially re-stitched together his old hypothesis with the discoveries of the modern age and try some ridiculous things to see if we can end aging very quickly. And basically, if we win Weissman's argument, Weissman's wager, we don't have to worry about Pascal's wager. Okay, so what we're trying to do is to really think about system capacity, homeostatic capacity, increasing evolutionary capacity. And people are concerned that if you slow down aging, you're slowing down evolution. Well, that may have made sense when the basis of innovation was your hardware, your genes. But now that we're acquiring traits through software, through ideas, through memes, living is a way to innovate, right? Because right now what's happening is we accumulate all this knowledge, but then our bodies fail, so we quickly try to transfer those memes to the next generation through school and books. But wouldn't it be just much better if we could just longitudinally acquire memes, just be healthy a whole lot longer so we can innovate onto ourselves rather than innovating over the generations? That's the basic idea. And I think the future of human history is towards longevity, where we are we're living in order to innovate. Dying was a great way to innovate in the Darwinian era of evolution, but now that we are in the cognitive era of evolution, living is a way to evolve. We're the awkward transition generations that's trying to figure it out, right? We're still in our dying bodies, but we're using memes to see if we can get out of this fate that we've all inherited from evolution. And if you want to learn more about that initiative, you can go to paloaltoprize.org. We've instantiated all this as a prize. I want to bring it all back down to the Cure Corridor today. Essentially, the healthcare century is really about the human capital century. We heard so much about the fact that it's all about people and talent. And demographically, we are in an interesting trend. The success of the longevity movement, ironically, also leads to people having fewer kids. I was really amazed how many people here have 2 or fewer children. So one of the unexpected outcomes of the longevity movement is that the population is actually stabilizing. Fewer and fewer people are having kids. 40% of the world now lives in countries where the replacement rate is under 1. Canada, Japan, Korea, China, America, all of Europe, Australia, New Zealand. They're all depopulating from a fertility perspective. Because once you forecast a long life, you start making different decisions, right? Again, when you're living to 22, you're probably going to get married when you're 13, and you got about 9 years to have kids and educate them, and then you die. Till death do us apart was a pretty small promise when your average lifespan with them was about 9 years. But now that you're going to potentially be with them for the next 80 years, I mean, do you really know you want to be with that person for the next 80 years? Till death do us apart is a kind of a scary promise, which is why most people now and the dating game decide they're just going to do more due diligence. They just stick around. They exist in their 30s and 40s, and maybe they have 1 or 2 children. So as a result, we're creating a very interesting demographic environment. We've got a lot of people that are aging, not enough young people. And luckily, Scottsdale is doing a wonderful job of being a great place to be if you're over 40. But due to your focus on technology and biotechnology, you're also attracting the young as a way to replenish that talent pool over time. We heard some initiatives this morning at breakfast and also during our panel speakers today that it's really about re-educating the public. If we're going to live 100 years, we might have 2nd or 3rd careers, so the focus on re-education is vital. But I would also argue that educating the young on healthcare and technology is vital. My son, when he was 9 years old, I got food allergies, just made the basic observation that EpiPen is what rescues us from food allergies. And he said, you know what, maybe food allergy is really just an epinephrine insufficiency. Not just an allergy, but an epinephrine insufficiency. So we tested out people with food allergies, and sure enough, they have epinephrine insufficiency. So it took a 9-year-old to state the obvious, because that's what 9-year-olds do, because 9-year-olds can see the Fs. None of us saw it. Such an obvious thing. Now imagine if every child in this country got medical school, got a medical education. Right now, only 10,000 of us get a medical education. Basically the rich and the straight-A students. That's totally unfair. If we're in the healthcare century, why should medical knowledge be quarantined to just 10,000? That's an artifact of history. When it was a guild system, when everybody was expected to practice. But now that we need to know it for our own health, I think medical education should be a right. I think we should teach medical school to every child. And we got to teach it below age 12, because if you teach it after 12, it takes 4 years to learn medical school, right? Just like it takes 4 years to learn how to speak French. If you teach children under 12 medical school, I think you can do it in 6 months. So imagine millions of kids growing up with medical education. That's the backup plan. I think they'll solve everything, right? So we're at a time now that's actually possible. Thanks to the internet age, we can actually make medical education affordable to everybody. And as we heard today, I think medical education is a priority here in Scottsdale. I'd love to see some of you try to push it down into elementary school. It's all possible right now. I want to leave you with just one more idea, because we're talking about investments, and there's a lot of scary things about the elderly population, especially here in Scottsdale. We are the industry that's helping extend lives, right? Which means we are the cause of extending pension fund liabilities. Pension funds right now have models that are so outdated and the return expectations are so large, they're not getting them. This is going to break the bank. What we need to do, my suggestion, is to have pension funds invest in profitable healthcare companies that are extending lives. That way you create a natural hedge to the longevity variable so that you generate the returns to your pensioners commensurate with their increasing lifespan. So those are some ideas for the young and the old that haven't been tried yet. I don't know if they're going to work, but I think these are all ideas worth trying. These are all part of the Fs that are hiding in plain sight that could dramatically change the future. I'm super excited for all of you because you're in an environment where there's already a focus on these things, focus on cures, focus on human capital, intellectual capital, financial capital, and you have the leadership in place, all of you, led by your mayor, Jim Lane, that is dedicated to doing something really great about healthcare. And if you're a region that is creating more value in health than you're consuming, you're a net creator of health, you're going to do well, and you're going to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Young, for that great presentation. Let's give him another hand, please, because it was really... And thanks again to our sponsors and our participating organizations, the Scottsdale Business Development Forum and Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce, for putting on today's event. And the proceeds, I would like you to know that this event is not intended to make money, but we certainly want to make sure that we cover the base. But if any of the net proceeds that we have from this will be going to, or I should say the proceeds should be going to Business United for Scottsdale Schools. And this is a local workforce redevelopment or development initiative that is helping to guarantee our local innovative companies have the right talent right here in Scottsdale. So we'll be moving any proceeds that we have from this to that organization. I'll leave it at that. I think it's been great to have you all here. I thank you for your attention. I hope that you enjoyed and were educated, and frankly, we'll all be working on that homeostatic abilities. So thank you for attending, and have a great day.